Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey. And Tom, we're now 3 games into the Stanley Cup final. I guess we're not surprised that Tampa Bay rose up. I mean, they are a 2-time defending Stanley Cup champion, but they played their best game, although I didn't think Colorado played poorly. I thought that Darcy Kemper, just didn't have his best game. And had he played well, I don't think Darcy Kemper has to win it for him, but he can't lose it for him. Right. So,
and I was surprised that Tampa held him just 2 goals too, right? I mean, 6-2.
Yeah.
Especially after the 7, not just because of the 7-0 game, but just look at the lineup that they have. So, but that's the funny thing, right? It's not just like it's a 1-goal loss either way. It's like a 7-0 game one way and then a 6-2 game. But I guess that's just 2 games. We'll see what happens tonight. Maybe both teams just need to settle in. But I guess the question now is, what does Colorado do for goaltending? Do they go back with Kemper?
Yeah, I think you do. He's the horse, and you have to sort of just ride him now and see what happens. I think if he plays, if you go back 2-2, then maybe you do change to Francoeur. But I felt in that game, we used the Lightning used a basic schoolyard shinny strategy of a guy goalie hasn't been tested, so let's just put pucks on him.
Yeah,
and that's what they did. Because they had fewer than 20 shots in game 2, and they came out firing. And I am always amused, though. Every year in the Stanley Cup final, or sometimes before in the conference final, we start hearing about they've figured out that you can beat this goalie on a high blocker side. Every year there's some, we've got them figured out, and it's always high. Well, when's the last time you can say, well, you can beat this goalie low? I mean, they got all goalies have the lower levels blocked off. That's the easiest to defend, but the hardest is those corners. And you're talking about just a couple of inches that these guys are shooting for.
And plus,
that's why.
Sorry, Kev, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, when you're watching hockey, and I'm always amused that with people, and a guy will take a shot from 10 feet out and shoot wide. And always somebody will say, how can you miss the net from 10 feet? And I want to say, well, it's because he's trying to put it in a slot that's, like that. And, if you miss, you're going to be high, but you're trying to get in that small area. They're not just trying to get it on goal because the goalie will block that. They're trying to fit it through a mail slot, essentially.
Right. And it's funny, too, how they all of a sudden figure out, okay, you can beat him behind his blocker. Well, the goalie's been playing in the NHL for, in some cases, years.
Right.
All of a sudden, now you've got the book on him, right?
And it's always a story about, they're running the goalie. How will he deal with that? And, we've talked about this before. It's not the first time that goalie has seen that. Yeah. You see now, if you see any youth hockey, which you do, I mean, they're screening the goalie at 9 years old. I mean, they're taught to get, create some confusion, take away his eyes, blah, blah, blah. I've watched, last night, we had my wife and I went and visited, had a little cookout with some friends of my wife's. She had played soccer with this woman and knows her from other endeavors as well. And her husband was a hockey ref, not at the highest levels, but did, And so anyway, we had the Memorial Cup was on in the background. We were actually playing cards, but it was there. So, I could, look up and see Sebastian Costa, the first-round pick, playing there and watching out. And I was amused that he's 6'6", and they had traffic in front of him, and he was just looking over the tops of the guys. You don't see that, kind of very often. That usually they're peeking around, trying to find a way, or between their stick and their arms and everything else. But he was peering over, trying to see what was going on.
Speaking of goaltenders, Igor Shesterkin, the Ranger goaltender, won the Vezina Trophy last night too.
Wasn't unanimous, though. I found that hard to believe.
Oh, it wasn't? Oh, okay.
No, it was. I think he got 29 of the 32 general managers. I like to know which general manager, because that's what they say about when they don't like our votes. Yeah, I want to know which writers didn't vote. So I just thought I'd say that. I want to know. I want to know the 3 GMs that didn't think Igor Shesterkin was the best goalie in the NHL this season. Because I don't know how you could think someone else was. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, you think Vasilevsky, but Vasilevsky didn't have the year that he's had in the past.
No, and the basis for comparison for Vasilevsky is Vasilevsky.
Yeah,
and
totally.
he wasn't as good as he was previously. Now, maybe that's unfair to Vasilevsky because no one is as good as he was, when he won the Vezina. But I mean, Shesterkin was clearly the best goalie, and I've become. I really like some of the new advanced stats, and the one I really like is goals prevented above the average, which I think is really a neat save, and it really is better than save percentage, because save percentage sometimes can be a team statistic, because where are those shots coming from. But when you're comparing goals prevented in terms of the high danger areas compared to the other goalies in the league, I think you get a real sense of how good it is. And Igor Shesterkin was dominant in that category. Dominant.
I like his confidence level too, right? He doesn't speak English very well. He gets up there with no prepared speech and just wings it. And that to me, that's kind of epitomizes who he is too. When I watch him play, we talked about this many times, where as a defenseman, I'm watching him going, that kid's, he's got it under control. I'm fine. Listen, I just screwed up. We turned the puck over, but he stopped it. There's no big deal. Let's just line up and get going again. So he's the real deal. He's good.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me, getting back to the Stanley Cup. We've seen 3 games now, and we know all about the Tampa Bay Lightning. We've seen them now for 3 years make their march. They've won now 13, 32, so they won 43 playoff games in less than 2 years. That's a lot of playoff games. 43 they've won in less than 2 years. And I've watched certainly Colorado throughout this postseason, and I would say based on the first 3 games, Colorado has been the best team.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's really that close. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that Tampa Bay can't win, because I do think they can win. But I think Colorado is the more impressive team. And if I had to have a team to go in and battle in the Stanley Cup final, and I could take either one of those, I would take Colorado, even though they haven't won it. Tampa Bay would. Yeah,
I hear you, but the other side of it is, and you're totally correct in what you're saying. As far as skill level goes and execution, and everything, Colorado's a better hockey team. I don't think they have the better goaltender. That's one place.
That's the one area. Right. Yeah.
But the other part to me, though, is that Tampa has just, again, they figured out how to win. They've got that winning attitude, right? Because they could have just folded into the tent in Game 3 there. They didn't. Not just didn't fold into the tent, but they went and won 6-2. So, but I'm with you, though. Colorado's a heck of a hockey team.
Yeah, they really are. They've been impressive. And, again, I've talked about this before, but I think it bears out. This is not a surprise. Like last July and August, when the first odds came out and people were laying down money, people that, know how to bet, were laying down money. People were putting money on the Colorado Avalanche and establishing them as the favorite. So, the people that do this for a living, they've, analyzed the advanced statistics and looked at the variables and, all the people with math degrees from MIT and, a lot of the East Coast, they've kind of got it all figured out, and they thought it would, Colorado. But
Now, here's some really important question for you. I know this really is a big deal to you. It's very important. Like, what do we think of Austin Matthews' hairdo last night? Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see it.
He's got the long hair going, and he's got the retreating hairline there going back and back. So,
I'm not sure that I saw it and I took note of it, but just
I don't think it's one of those things that really means a lot to you, but
no, it doesn't. Yeah. I mean, hockey players like to make statements. He had the open shirt too.
Yeah, he did. Yes, definitely.
So I noted that. I like Matthews just as a person. I've known him a while. I wrote about him when he was 17, and I thought he's made all the right decisions. Like, I loved his decision to go over to Switzerland.
Yeah.
He was good enough to play. He had sort of, he had outgrown his available leagues here. And so he went over and just played in Switzerland and learned how to be a pro.
Right? It's something different that most people don't do.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised. Like any young player, like I don't know, he behaved badly at times. He had that confrontation with the security guard, and usually in those cases, there's drinking involved.
Yes.
And you can certainly speak to that. So you remember what it was like when you were a young player.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love the way you said that too.
Yeah.
Susan's always trying to stir the pot. I support her. Like, she's a fan favorite, but God.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that was part of Susan. I'm sure that was part of the Lightning strategy. Let's just say Braden points her, because we'll be a better team. We'll be a better team without him. So
that's right. Because
they probably argued, it was probably a great debate whether they should go without Hedman or go without Point.
Definitely
to be a better team.
And they actually point out the fact that they got that information from the show. They said, "Listen, this is what they say on the show."
Yeah, for sure. So so we'll have some fun with that. But I don't, that high ankle sprain is such a difficult injury. Like I give them high marks for trying to play on it, but you're not going to help the team.
Exactly. Well, you're taking up a spot in the roster. You're getting the line. Maybe you're okay to play at the start, but then you tweak it again, which is inevitably what's going to happen. And now you're out of the game, and you're down a man. So
the other thing about the series too, and not that I'm a big racing fan, because I'm not, but I've covered enough races in my career to be just a little bit dangerous in discussing them, but. The one thing I've noted in covering racing is these finely tuned machines. It's just the little things like, when you cover the race, they send you around in the middle of like how fast they are on the straightaways, and the teams that are really, really good are just quicker into the corners and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I've noticed too about this Stanley Cup final. Colorado is just quicker than Tampa Bay. And the speed element, when everybody's so good, like both teams are so good, that when you're just a little bit faster, a little bit quicker to that puck, it really makes a difference. And in all three games, I think, I've noticed the speed aspect really favors. So, we talked about the goaltending favoring Tampa Bay, but the speed definitely favors Colorado. Those guys.
They attack. I mean, they all, particularly Makar and McKinnon, but so many of the other players look like Makar and McKinnon when they're playing too, right? It's that same. They practice together, so I'm assuming this is the way we practice, right? It's high speed.
Well, and I think you've actually mentioned this before. When you got faster guys, you pull the other guys along, because they've got to go quicker to keep up with you.
Yeah, definitely. It was case in point. My first year was before Ray Russelainen got here. We had Freddie Shiro coaching. We had a bunch of bigger, tougher guys. And Herbie came in the next year, brought in Ray Russelainen, and he could fly. Herbie had that drill where he had to go around the rink 3 times in 45 seconds. He'd move the nets up a little bit. And literally, first time we did it in training camp, Ray Russelainen lapped us, some of us guys. So we realized we had to change. Listen, we were never going to be as fast as him, but we realized we were all trying to cut the corner really quick and everything like that. I realized that's not what he did. He kept his feet moving, going around the corners, and was therefore a much faster skater. So we had to learn to be better skaters to get there. For us, we were just going to get embarrassed by Ray every time we did that drill. So,
well, you were properly embarrassed when.
Totally. Yeah, it was. Well, that was tough training camp too, because I'd had my good first year. And back then, the veteran players, which I wasn't really a veteran player, although I had in my mind that I was, the veteran players always showed up at training camp out of shape and worked themselves into shape. It was a longer training camp, 2-a-day practices and everything. So I showed up, the worst thing I could have done, showed up to training camp, probably about 10, 15 pounds overweight and not in shape at all. And that's Herbie's first year. So that, we had our testing over here in New York. And then we flew over to Finland for training camp at this place called Viramäki, I think it was called. So we flew all the way over there, went right on the ice. Herbie sent everybody else off the ice, kept me out there and skated me for about another 20, 25 minutes all by myself. And I'm whining like, what's Herbie picking on me for? Well, picked on because I gave him a great source to show everybody else, this is the way we're going to do things here from now on. You don't show up to training camp out of shape. So that was the same training camp that actually came in. So, I had a lot of catching up to do after that. So.
Yeah, I mean, the training now is so different for players. It's so year round. And, the idea of, guys are already trying to, they'll take a couple of weeks off after the season and then they're right back into training and getting ready. And, There's most of them know the schedules of the other players. They come back to their home cities. They're working out with 10 other guys. They're scrimmaging a little bit, throwing the puck around. They're getting ready.
I just answered this question. I apologize for that, but yes, Bobby Hope came over. He was he was coming back, making a comeback, and he went over there filming. We went to Sweden. He went there as well, and there was Anders Hedberg and Ulf Nielsen all there together. The guys played together in Winnipeg. So yes, sorry.
Yeah. There used to be, there'd be summer leagues too, and not many, but some guys would jump into those.
Yep.
And play. When I was in Port Huron, Michigan, working for the newspaper there, Sarnia is right across the Blue Water Bridge there, and we had the Sarnia Summer Pro League, it was called. And there were 4 or 5 teams, and the Verbeeks had kind of ran a team, the Hunters, because they're from that.
Yeah.
Particularly the Verbeeks are from right across the bridge. I think they're from Petrolia.
I think so. Yeah.
And so the Verbeeks had a team, the Hunters had a team. Sean Burr, if you remember him, he was a young junior player then.
Yeah.
He would come over and
what is Sean Burr doing now? Is he still?
He's passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wow.
Yeah. No, he passed away as a young man.
Wow.
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't recall now.
Sean Burr passed away. I don't even know if I knew that. That's terrible. Wow.
Yeah. But and that league was really good. Wayne Merrick, if you remember Wayne Merrick, I think he played 1 year, and a lot of former IHL players. Billy LeCain, who was a great minor league player, was involved in that, and it was good hockey. You had a lot of junior players that would be in it, so you'd have younger guys and older guys, and one game I remember in particular, the Verbeeks and the Hunters squared off.
I was just going to ask about that. I was wondering,
the Hunter boys and the Verbeeks did not get along, and then the two dads, old man Hunter, as somebody called him,
right?
And they weren't that old then, and old man Verbeek, and I remember Mr. Verbeek yelling at Patty, "You got to watch your brother, protect your brother," because he was younger. Brian was younger, so it was a lot of fun. But
I can see that those guys
it was so typically Canadian in this regard. Even though it was pretty heated and the competition was intense, everybody went to the brass rail to drink when it was done. So so it was it was a fun league. It really was.
Funny. Like you commented the other day about Bob Nystrom, where I said how much I respected him, and I also talked about how the fact he sent me to the hospital for one night too. When you say that, it's just like
it's a kind of a nutty existence. But isn't that one of the coolest thing about our sport is when it's all said and done, everybody shakes hands, and I love the moments. It's usually former teammates or junior teammates that they stop and they pause and they put their arm around one another. That's like the coolest thing. We can fight, but when it's done, we're proud of each other. So.
Yeah, you actually respect the guy more that punches you in the head, right? It's weird.
Yeah. Well, at that moment, you don't respect.
No, that's true. That is true.
So, anyway, there's still other things to talk about. I'm fascinated by the report that the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Florida Panthers, I got the right state, wrong team. The Florida Panthers are talking seriously with Paul Maurice about possibly coming in there and being their head coach. And now the big question is, what about the interim coach, Andrew Brunette? And supposedly they're going to try to figure out a job for him within the organization. But I think now I'm really reading the tea leaves here because I have not talked to Bill Zito about this.
Yeah.
But my guess is that Bill Zito was bothered by the fact that they didn't make any progress defensively.
Yeah.
And most coaches tell you, you can't turn a poor offensive team into a great offensive team because it's really a skill thing. But you can turn a poor defensive team into a better defensive team because it's systems and it's just commitment and it's desire. And we didn't see that with the Panthers. They didn't get better defensively. That was still problematic for them. So I'm pretty sure Paul Maurice can do that.
Yeah.
So
that is a good point because when you watch them play, they were a fantastic offensive team.
They were.
They gave up so many goals, and it really showed in the playoffs too. And ultimately, it's great to have a great regular season, but your job and your goal is to win the Stanley Cup. So, and it's pretty obvious that they're not going. If they're going to continue to play that way that they played this year, that's not going to happen for Florida, right? So,
Yeah, and of course, if that is indeed true, is if Paul Maurice is being brought in, I don't even know how would Andrew Burnett feel about, what if they said to him, you can be an associate coach or assistant coach? I don't know. Would you want that, or would you rather be an assistant general manager, for example?
After you're a head coach, and you did have some success, right? They did win the President's Trophy. So, they won the President's Trophy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. I guess, does he feel like he's a head coach now? Does he feel like he can go someplace else in the National Hockey League and be a head coach? That's the question. But
yeah, and the other interesting thing about the coach hirings, and we'll discount the Islander situation only because Lou had already made up his mind. There was no search. It was Lane Lambert. But for the most part, the teams have gone for the proven guys, the experienced guys. And the only argument you can make for why they would do that is in the case of Vegas and Dallas, you got two teams who see themselves as a contender. And even the Flyers, even though they were a horrendous team, and you and I would say they're going in the other direction, they still think they're,
right? See, I'm not disputing you, but if they think they're a contender, I think they're seriously wrong. I think that decision was made more that they want to change the culture of their hockey team, right? And that's what Tortorella is going to do, right? That he's done that.
Yeah, you're changing the culture, but you don't see them stripping it down to the chassis. They gave Ristolainen a lengthy extension. They're talking about, there's been rumors about them trying to get a big free agent. They're going to move. That doesn't sound like a team that's stripping it down.
No, I agree with you. It does not look like they're stripping it down, but I think they should be. That team's a long way away from
they're a poor team.
Yeah.
And they want to change the culture. But if you're doing that, I don't think you bring in a Tortorella. I think you want to, the Maple Leafs did that with Mike Babcock, but the idea for him, the reason he would be willing to do that was, first of all, is the Maple Leafs, which is a storied franchise, and of course the Flyers are too. I mean, even Tortorella said he wanted to do that, but more importantly, they paid him $8 million.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I just think with Tortorella, okay, so let's assume, and you and I both agree, we think they are wrong, but they think they are still a contender, but that they don't need to go into that strip down mode.
Right.
But the problem there is the culture needs to be changed, and he's the guy to change the culture. I mean, of all the coaches in the National Hockey right now, he's probably the biggest guy as far as changing the culture, especially where they're at right now.
Yeah.
They're a soft team. It's a country club, and that's going to change. And that's not Philadelphia Flyer hockey. It's not going to go back to the Broad Street Bullies back in the 70s, but there's just,
but I wrote a piece on that last week, and my point was John Tortorella was made to coach the Flyers.
Yes.
Like the Flyer fan base, starting with the days of the Broad Street Bullies, and I'm not talking about fighting.
Yeah.
I'm talking about they want edgy players. Yep. They want guys who play hard. Yep. They want and that's Tortorella's game. And Tortorella's game is, and we have a lot of people who watch us who are from the New York area, and they're going to remember what Tortorella was like. He wanted you to block shots, but more importantly, he wanted you on that guy across from you. Yep. So there, when he got the puck, that you were right there with him. You knew what kind of chewing gum and mouthwash to use.
Yeah.
That's how close they wanted you to him, and I think he will demand that again. And the other thing he said. He used the word culture, and he goes, I hate that word. He goes, I usually say the standard. He said, I want a different standard. So
and he did that here. And Tom Rennie was a good hockey coach, really intelligent hockey man. But the teams he had were kind of softer teams. And then Tortorella came in, and that all changed.
Yeah.
And he turned into the guy that made everybody got the most out of his players. The players didn't always like him, but he got the most out of them. So
the other quote that was really interesting. Is he said, that to me, that's an everyday thing. That's not a twice a week thing, 5 days a week. Yeah. You don't, when you see something that your team is doing and you don't like, and it's a Tuesday and you've got a schedule that you're keeping and what you're working on and everything else, and you see a thing that really bugs you, he said, you don't put it off till Wednesday because, there'll be other things come up on Wednesday. Yeah. He said, it's an everyday thing for me.
Yeah.
So he said, if something happens on Tuesday, I'm going to address it on Tuesday. He said,
totally.
And
the one guy I think it's going to be interesting watching is Carter Hart, right? So here's a young kid who arguably was rushed along 2 years ago, didn't have a very good year at all. In fact, the coach, Alan Vigneault, calls him out and says he just needs to work harder. And rarely does an NHL coach say that about a goaltender. But for him to say that, obviously the problem was him now. And Vigneault, usually, to me, that's usually not his style, but it's definitely more Tortorella. So I would think he's one of the targets from Tortorella. He says, I'm going to push this kid and get the most out of him, because everybody says he's a fantastic goaltender, and he's shown that he can be a fantastic goaltender.
Yeah, he and Bobrovsky didn't always hit it off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's an astute observation.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
That could be an issue, but we'll see. Speaking of that, there's been rumblings about the Panthers trying to move Bobrovsky, but I don't know. That's impossible task. $10 million goalie. How much can you possibly retain?
What's that, like 3 or 4 more years on that contract too?
Maybe longer. We should look it up, but it's a while, and I mean that's a problem that Bill Zito inherited.
Right.
That wasn't his doing.
Well, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but speaking of goaltenders, is Edmonton in a spot that needs a goaltender, right? But I guess they've got problems with the cap too, though, right? There's not a lot of room for the cap.
No, there's not any room. They certainly don't have room for a $10 million goalie.
Yeah.
But like, where are you going to go? The other big story here too that's floating out there that I think is going to impact what happens. Backstrom had that hip resurfacing.
Yeah.
Now that's, to me, is I like indicators, and I'm sure. I mean, all surgeries are different, I'm sure, and the extent of the injuries. But Ryan Kessler had that surgery and he hasn't played.
That's right.
Again, and I think Eddie Jovanovski had it and did come back, but I think it took him well over a year.
Right.
That hip injury is serious enough that I think this is career jeopardizing.
Does that mean the window is closed on Washington Capitals then?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're starting to hear rumblings. Will Ovechkin ask them to pursue Malkin if he's available? How about Malkin and Ovi? Together.
I think you're right that he would probably ask for that, but does Pittsburgh want to move him to Washington?
Well, they don't have a say. He's a UFA.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a UFA.
Yeah.
And then the other rumor is, and I like this player a lot, JT Miller. I think he's underrated. 90 some points this year. He's not big, but he's not small.
Yep.
And he's got a little edge to him, a little bite, and he can play. He can really play. Yeah. And after Boudreau took over, he was the highest scoring player on the Canucks.
Right.
And that Canucks team, beware of and Tom Wilson is out 6 months as well. But that Canucks team, beware of them a little bit. Yeah. All that talk about they were going to trade Besser, and Jim Rutherford says no. No, we're not trading Besser.
I was hearing that before Jim Rutherford got there. It's like, really, you got to get that bad shape from the cap standpoint. You have to trade him.
Yeah, like we're not even. You don't have to say who you're going to qualify. But Jim Rutherford has already said, yeah, we're qualifying Brock Besser, which that makes perfect sense to me. He's a good hockey player,
really good hockey player. I like him a lot. Yeah.
And the Russian whose name escapes me right now, but the one that everybody wanted, the free agent that. Flavor of the month from the KHL. You don't know whether he's Kaprizov or if he's one of those Russians that didn't make it, but everybody's pretty excited about him. And he's joining that team too. He wouldn't go to Edmonton. He's going to Vancouver. So, but Edmonton was in the hunt. And so now they've added him. Somebody's got to go there. Connor Garland, maybe JT Miller. But I don't know how they can trade JT Miller because, like I said, once Boudreau took over, when you look at the statistics post Boudreau, JT Miller was his guy,
And Jimmy Rutherford's good too, right? He's proven himself over and over that he can find a way to get it done, right? So,
yep. But there's been talk about to Washington and JT Miller. So
Huh.
So we covered Maurice there. That was the hot news. Where does Barry Trotz end up?
Yeah, and why is it taking so long? He's dictating the pace of this?
Yeah, yeah, he
Wow.
says so. I mean, really, what are his options now? Like, it seems like Boston wants a young guy with Boston a background, or younger, I should say.
Oh.
But they're talking about Leach, who's an assistant coach now, but was the Providence's head coach at some point. Like that, he's in the mix, and maybe even David Quinn
Yeah.
is might be in the mix as well, and he certainly has Boston roots.
Yeah. Wow.
So
That's interesting. I liked him as a coach. I guess the story was, maybe you know better than I do, that there's a lot of talk like the older players or the more star players didn't get along with him that well. But man, I liked a lot of things he was doing. He was very demanding of the players too. And if they didn't do what they were supposed to be doing, he would sit them up in the press box. But he would do it in a very professional way. He wouldn't say bad things about it. Say, listen, this player just needs to regroup a little bit here, but he'll be back in the lineup. I liked him as I think the team was in a different stage of development. Maybe he was the wrong coach for that time that the Rangers were in that point of their development. But I think he'd do well with that team. But I guess part of the issue too is, if we're correct, if it is accurate that Patrice Bergeron was the one that said he's not coming back if Cassidy's staying there. So it obviously means Patrice Bergeron have a lot to say with what's going on in the hockey team. The other rumor was that we heard, did we discuss this too, where Pasternak is saying that he's not re-signing with Boston and Sweeney's still there as general manager?
yeah, and then of course JT Barry came out and said, I don't know what the heck anybody's talking about, because I am right now, in negotiations with the Bruins.
Oh, I didn't know that part. Okay.
Yeah. So, we don't know what that is now. It is, maybe he was upset that Sweeney and Krejci. But I guess the question was, that suggested that the issue was with Sweeney. And, before then we had heard that maybe Krejci and Cassidy were also had an issue. But I don't know. I thought that Krejci just wanted to go home.
It seems like everybody else is pushing for him to come back instead of him. He's not the one that's talking about.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, he was an exceptional player. There's no doubt about that. And they're going to need him if Bergman is not coming back.
Any surprise that Makar won the Norris Trophy last night?
No, but I mean it's too bad that Roman Josi was going up against him, because they're both Norris quality. Right. And those issues, the fact that Josi got more first place votes, people are going to talk about that.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. He got more first place votes. Oh,
yeah, he did. And the only reason I don't like that as a past president of the Writers Association is because when that happens, it usually means that somebody has kept somebody off the ballot, like didn't give them any votes. And I just can't understand that. How could anybody vote for the Norris Trophy and not believe that Josi was one of the top 5 defensemen in the league?
No
so I don't I have no problem. Sometimes that's the way it happens, where especially in a very close race, more people think the other guy's first, but the majority of people thought Makar was either first or second, and some people thought Josi was third. So I don't know. It's a very complicated. It's all transparent now, and that over time that grew. I remember when I was president, the writers really didn't want it to be public. They didn't want to get beat up and have people call them names and stuff for voting, and it gets pretty serious. When I was president, I had some general managers who didn't like the results of the balloting, and I had to walk through. And to be honest. And this speaks to the quality of people we had at GM. Usually when I explained our process and how it all worked, they were pretty impressed by it. They could tell that I took it very seriously, and, the way we picked our writers and our at-large and, the geographic balance. And when I walked them through everything and I gave them results and what we've put together to kind of show there was no geographic favoritism, they said, well, they appreciated me doing that. But not everybody. There was at least a couple who didn't appreciate my explanation and just were unhappy about
Yeah.
about the results.
Yeah.
So
GM of the year, the three candidates: Brisebois of Tampa, Drury of the Rangers, and Sakic of Colorado.
yeah.
That's we've discussed this before. That's kind of a strange trophy, right? Because it's not just that 1 year that it's for. Like some of these moves that have been made, especially, but I look at more like with Sakic and Brisebois, it's some moves they've made in the past years that really are affecting them now. Right?
Well, it also counts the playoffs. It's the only award that counts the playoffs, so you can take that into consideration. So, and I would say, the voting has been done now, but obviously, I would think Sakic will be the favorite, to be honest.
You look at that lineup he's put together. I mean, I obviously I'm here in New York with the Rangers, and you think Drury made a really, like we talk about the culture of the team. He obviously, that's what he was brought in for, and he really changed the culture of the Rangers too. So he's a good candidate too. But
yeah.
But that's Brisebois. They's probably, and as much as I think he's done a fantastic job, his team's not as good as it was in the past. So it's like, okay, well then why are you on that list? But again, he's probably on that list more for
because the team is still good.
Yep,
he's on that list because he's kept it competitive. I mean, that's hard to do. I used to marvel at Stan Bowman, like he never got enough credit because when you look at the Blackhawk teams that won, like he changed them significantly from year to year for financial reasons, and yet the people he shuffled in and out were able to give him the same resules. So I thought he did. I don't think he ever got enough credit for the job.
He's a quiet guy, right? He just was
for sure. But I would say in that group, just and again, it's an odd panel of voters too. It's media, it's broadcasters, it's coaches, it's GMs, it's kind of a mishmash.
That award? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I would say that if I was handicapping it, I would say it would be Sakic, Brisebois, and then Drury.
Okay, so just so we can argue about something, we don't want to get along too well all the time. Don't you think that the team that Colorado had, did he make many changes? Did Sakic make a lot of changes this past season? Don't you think that Drury made more changes? There were more.
Well, I don't think the award says goes to the GM who makes the most changes. I think the award is for the guy that does the best kind of overall job. So,
well, isn't that what the GM does though? Puts the lineup together.
Do you think that it's GMs that just that it's the changes is the job, or is it just
who?
I thought it was.
It wasn't the Zamboni driver that went out and got all the players, right?
Yeah. So, well, I just don't think you're paying enough homage to the day-to-day operation of, keeping everybody together and on the same page and all that kind of stuff. I think it's more than just making changes. Otherwise, it would go every year to the team that just gets the points from, if you go take the points from last year and if they get more points this year, then the team with the most points would get the award.
Not didn't make any changes, but I think Drury made so many changes that really changed the culture of the team, made a big effect, even up to the trade deadline. So,
so Bill Zito should have got it last year because he changed 15 guys and made it.
I do think so. I do think it's right on that. I thought Bill Zito did a fantastic job. He changed
I did too, but I don't think he won it last year.
No, he didn't. But that's what I mean, though. I think it's almost by reputation. Like Sakic put this team together that is there now, not just in this one past season.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they look at it from just the calendar year. So
I think but it's for this season, right? And I think we're kind of saying the same thing, but I think that's why this award is maybe one of the more odd awards. Like, are you?
Well, it's unique for sure.
Are you rewarding? Is he winning the award for what he did this past season, or what he's done?
No, I would say the answer to that is no.
Right.
So I think it's given this year, but I think it's recognition for the work that's been put into this team, for this season, and to me that work has been put in for a few years. Like I think it's hard for. And I think that's why Zito didn't win. He inherited a group of people, and then he made changes. And I think he will win it, but he may not win it till next year. So
I guess it's the definition of what the award really is.
Right.
So I'm more looking at it like not the way you're saying it. I'm more looking at it as for this one season. You made all these changes. Now the team's where it's at. But you're right.
Yeah. So. But I don't know. I agree with you that it's a very unique perspective. And I think it's hard to get your arms around it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
On
Well, the important thing here is that Susan Brooks agrees with me. So that's all that matters right there.
Yeah, well, that's, Susan makes a good point too, and that there's comparisons. That has always been my criticism of Coach of the Year, is that people want to see it as just statistical. I mean, they don't say that, but like they want to give Coach of the Year to the team that has come the farthest from the previous year. Like that's how they want to do it. They don't say that, but usually the people that are nominated, like if you had 70 points this year, and then you had 92 the following year, they want to say you were the Coach of the Year because you made that 22 points better.
But I guess the people that are voting on that, both the Coach of the Year and General Manager of the Year, are they knowledgeable enough about each team and how much those people did for that team, right?
Well, in theory, I think that was the philosophy of the panel approach. This was the GMs that, they really created this award for themselves.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
Yeah. And so they took a panel approach to it. They certainly weren't going to have the writers vote on them.
Yeah.
Although there are writers, there are a handful, or a few. But yeah, I mean, that's been a criticism toward Coach of the Year, is just as Susan pointed out, that's how people want to see it. Sure. You got 70 points in 2019-20, and then you got 96 in 2021. Then you've improved that team.
And so, we use the Rangers for example. So the Ranger people here that watch the team all the time and can see more than just the points, but you can't really do that for all the teams around the National Hockey League, right?
No, and the problem with that Coaching of the Year, and the same could certainly be true of for the GM award, is it excludes the coaches, or in this case, the general managers of really good teams, like. And the GM award obviously does not, because we have both Brisebois and Sakic there. So you can have a good team. You can't be Coach of the Year. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like the Stanley Cup winner rarely wins Coach of the Year. First of all, it's voted on before the playoffs. Right. But more importantly, that's traditionally how it's decided, the improvement in the team. Like Gerard Gallant, in my opinion, had a better shot of being Coach of the Year than Drury would have. Although, somehow Drury got on the list. So
Drury hired Gallant, right? So
yeah. So that's part of it. Yeah. So.
It's a good argument, though. But it's one of those awards that you're never going to solve it, right? Somebody's always going to, other teams are going to be.
No, and then there's, and I try to tell this to people, although you can't convince people this. There's no right answer. Like there's your opinion and my opinion, and neither one of us. It doesn't matter what we think.
Yeah, that's the case with most awards, right? I mean, I guess a guy like Seider winning Rookie of the Year, that's pretty. And pretty much everybody's going to agree with that, right? Yeah.
But the best example is for the greatest player of all time. Scotty Bowman thinks it's Bobby Orr. I think it's Gordie Howe. You might think it's Wayne Gretzky. Somebody else, may think it's something. I mean, really, I really said, and people have just. I've written about this, and people just call it what a cop out when I say it's really 1A, 1B, 1C for me. Like most dynamic player I ever saw was Bobby Orr. The most creative player I saw was Wayne Gretzky. The best goal scorer was Mario Lemieux, and the best all around player was Gordie Howe. That's how I see it. I don't know how to look at it any other way.
20 years from now, where's Connor McDavid in that argument, right?
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, and Sidney Crosby. I mean, Crosby has come an incredibly long way. Like, is he now moved into the Mount Rushmore? Is there 4 or 5 on Rushmore? I've been there. It's terrible that I don't know that.
It's 4, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there's 4. Yeah, so right now there's no room for Crosby on Rushmore. But he might be in the top 5 now. He's really
And then
pushed
part,
it.
part of that argument is the change in, yes, Alan, thank you very much. Alan tells us it's 4 and Mount Rushmore. But part of the argument is going to be with those more newer players is the change of the game. The game isn't at all like it was back when Gordie Howe played or Wayne Gretzky played even, right?
Yeah.
You know, the
But
red
it's not, see, I don't think that's as a big a problem that other people do when they debate that, just for this reason. Like, to me, it's a real simple argument to just everyone stipulate, just like we're in a court of law, and we'll just say, well, let's just all agree to this, because it's saying, and the agreement we can reach is no matter what era these guys played in, they would have figured out a way to excel because they're great players and that's what they do. And now, but they would have been different players. Like Gordie Howe probably would have played, if he was today, he probably would have played at 225 instead of 202.
Yeah.
So he would have been a bigger force, a bigger block.
But part of the greatness of Gordie Howe was also his toughness, right? Which today's game would not, the stuff that he did back then, he wouldn't be doing today.
Yeah, but the tougher players are still tough. Like, we know, like, even though they're not beating people up, we know who goes in the corner and comes out with the puck. You know what I mean? They still, you still have an advantage when you're tough, you know? You know, I mean, one of the reasons I think Matthews has evolved as a player is he's more beastly. You know, he can skate and everything else, but now he's stronger. Like when he goes into the corner, he comes out with the puck. And
that's a great question. And Kevin and I have talked about this in the past too, that the way Tom Laidlaw played back in the 80s when he played, I would not have played in the National Hockey League today. Now, I'd like to think that I wanted to play in the National Hockey League enough that I would have adapted and changed my game, but my skating would have had to be better. You know, back then it was hooking and holding and punching guys in the back of the head. The stuff we did in front of the net was totally different. So I would have had to adapt my game. I hope that I would have. I mean, I worked hard to play the way it was back then. I hope I would have put that same work in to now change my game and be better. So,
well, and let's just take that argument further. Like, we know that what you're willing to do to change your lifestyle because you're doing that now. You know, the True Grit lifestyle. You might have done that a lot earlier.
Yeah, totally.
You would have drank less. You would have been far more dedicated to training. You know, and it's just because the era is different.
Trained differently. The knowledgeable about diets and hydration and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like you wouldn't have thought Robbie Ftorek was goofy. You would have been a disciple.
That's true. Yeah, it's so funny to look back at when all the rest of the guys are in the room. One guy gets down on the floor and starts stretching. We're all looking at him like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the best example. Rod Brindamore, who was the coach of Carolina Hurricanes, when he first came in the league and was living in the weight room, he was very unique, very, very new. Now, what he did back then is standard and maybe below standard for what guys do now.
Totally. Yeah, working out after the game,
right?
On the bike, lifting weights. So yeah, totally different.
Yeah, like he is, and that's why today, you know, guys talk about, you know, when he starts out I think they still do it. I could be wrong, but they used to do a lengthy run at the start of training camp, and Rod Brindamore would win it, even as a coach, and he can jump in and play now with his guys, and just because he's in great shape. So, and Tom can still play. You know, he's in his 60s.
So things have come a long way. We were joking around before the show. Yesterday, I was at Fordham University, their Westchester campus, speaking to a bunch of junior and seniors in high school about the entrepreneurship in sports. So he's kind of laughing. When I went to college, I didn't go to any classes at all. Here, all of a sudden, now I'm teaching these classes. So things have changed.
Yeah. Anyway, we've gone overboard. I thought this was a good discussion, though, and everybody can watch the game. Game 4. We'll have a lot to talk about next week. But if you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com and also HockeyBuzz.com.
Great show today. And if anybody wants to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.